Hey guys, welcome back to the series. We are here at CIM's office with no other than Brian McGowan, who's helped get Centennial Yards going. We're going to dive into a lot of things, Brian's background, we're going to dive into what's going on with Centennial Yards today and just give you a good update on what's happening. So we're going to dive in here. We've got, this is the diagram or diorama, whatever you want to call it. The model. Yeah, and I guess Brian, we'll just let you kind of give us a snapshot of where we at and things, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, a lot going on, especially if you look out that window. You can see a ton of construction and construction cranes going on up. Yeah. More are coming in the next month. But we really started kind of in the south end of the site. You know, all the buildings in gray are the property that we own. So it's approximately 50 acres. At the end of the day, we'll build between 6 and 7 million square feet. It'll be a $5 billion project, multi-use, and office, residential, hospitality, bars, restaurants, and things like that, and a giant fan zone where people can gather. But we started here in the south. This long, skinny building was historic building, adaptive reuse, built in 1905. It was the Southern Railways Company building. It then subsequently became Norfolk Southern, but we converted the longer of the two buildings into 162 apartments. The big story there was 3 years ago when we started leasing those, they filled up very fast. So within 45 days, the entire building was leased up, which for us was very encouraging, and I think encouraging for other investors in downtown that people want to live downtown. I think there was this like, no one's going to live downtown until there's more stuff to do and there's a supermarket and it feels safer. Not true. You know, people want to live downtown. There's just not enough places to live downtown. So that sent a really good signal to us and I think to others. There's a brewery at the base of it called Wildleaf Brewing. There's other retail base at the bottom, which is really cool space. And we're negotiating leases for other uses on that bottom floor. So very excited about what's happening there. The bridge in the middle is a pedestrian bridge. It used to be called the Nelson Street Bridge. The city condemned it in I think 2017 or something like that because it was so unsafe they didn't want people even walking on it. Wow. We committed to tearing it down and rebuilding it. So we did that. We tore it down, rebuilt it. It's a pedestrian bridge now. It's called the Steel Bridge after Carrie Steele Logan. Do you know who she is?
I don't.
So she's known as the mother of orphans. Oh. So she was a formerly enslaved person who worked at a train station that was right here, and she would commandeer freight cars to save children who were abandoned at that train station. Wow. And then she wrote a book, and she used the proceeds of the book to buy a house, and she started an orphanage, and that still operates to this day. So we named the bridge after her. We thought that was appropriate. Yes. The building behind it, this building, we're pushing to break ground on that before the end of the year. That's 230 apartments, over 5,000 square feet of retail. This building here on the Castleberry hillside will be a boutique hotel. We want to break ground. We're in for permits right now. We want to break ground on that in the next couple of months. That'll be 120 rooms. Mm-hmm. I skipped this building here. Then we call it the 99, the second part of this. That adaptive reuse building built in 1905. We are selling that to a New York City-based boutique hotel operator. So there'll be 2 boutique hotels. That'll be about 180 rooms, I believe. Moving north, these are the 2 buildings that are under construction now that we recently topped out on. This building is the Mitchell, 300 apartments, 3 restaurants at the base of that. This building is a hotel, 300 hotel rooms, called Hotel Phoenix for obvious reasons. If you're from Atlanta, you should know why we named it that. We're very proud of that. Very beautiful building, both TVS design buildings. The Mitchell will open for leasing in May and June of this year. People will be moving in July. That's how fast
that's big.
It's going.
Yeah.
And Hotel Phoenix will open in September, and we'll do a grand opening in November. And there'll be 2 great restaurants in this hotel as well. So the great Michelin-starred restaurant in the lobby, and then there's this beautiful restaurant space on the roof. Which has a dedicated elevator that takes you straight up to the top.
Yeah, I remember it really wasn't that long ago. We had that big groundbreaking over there.
Yeah.
Was that? I think it was November of 22.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like 3 years ago. So like we move very fast, as you know, in the real estate world. That's light speed.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, we made this announcement. This section here, which is currently under construction, 7.5 acres, 4 buildings totaling at about 500,000 square feet of space. One of the buildings is Cosm, a very cool sports bar concept, like the Sphere in Vegas shrunk down inside of the building for sporting events.
Yeah.
We signed a lease on that. That's under construction. The building behind it, this large building, is a 5,300 seat live music theater. Can't tell you who that is yet. We'll be making that announcement soon. But it will be their crown jewel of theaters in the United States. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah.
This building here is another hotel, probably 230 rooms. I should have mentioned earlier that this hotel, CIM is going to own and flag that. So we have a hospitality division. We own the Dominic Hotel in New York City, a few other hotels. So that's going to be our hotel. The second one will not be. That we are negotiating with somebody who will basically own that and flag it themselves.
Okay. So it doesn't have a name yet.
It doesn't have a name yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still negotiating on that.
Yeah.
And then this fourth building is a 50,000 square feet, multi-tenant, food and beverage, bars and restaurant kind of a building.
Okay.
Extraordinary amount of interest in all the retail space. By the way, there's retail wrapping. All three of these buildings has retail spaces around them. So there'll be lots of doors, as they say, and different things to do when you're in the fan zone, which, by the way, can hold 5,000 people. So all the spaces in between those buildings are pedestrian only, and there's lots of digital signage and billboards. So if Atlanta can ever win a championship game, that's where we're going to celebrate.
Well, that's exciting. This is good. Okay, so it's kind of the southern end. We've got this, and then as these fill in, we go further up towards Marietta Street, and I mean those are probably moving targets for y'all. But
and there's still holes to fill. Obviously, this site here we're very, very focused on that site just from a construction logistics perspective. The viaducts that surround the site, you can't put cranes on them.
Interesting.
So you have to build from beneath and go up. And so we have to be able to access this underneath the viaducts. So this site's a big priority for us. This site here, we think is also prime, and we have obviously ideas and plans on that. And then again, as you move north, then the next part of it is the CNN deck, the big, gigantic CNN deck, which we chopped off a big chunk of it to make room for this a couple of months ago.
So will you just build on top?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay.
The structure, you can build on top of it. So we're analyzing that now to figure out, we sort of see it as an extension of the entertainment district, although the whole thing is an entertainment district.
Yeah.
To be clear, because there'll be bars and restaurants and cool things to do at the ground level throughout the entire project.
Yeah.
Residential over retail kind of a feel. So that's next, and then like you said, as you get closer to Marietta, you're now more vertical. So we envision taller buildings, residential, eventually office. This, in fact, is a 520,000 square foot Class A office building, SOM designed, and I'll build that tomorrow if somebody shows up and wants half of it.
It's a beautiful building. I've seen some of the renderings and stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah. We're underway. I think the big message is, and Tony Ressler says this all the time, is we're full steam ahead. And we have 500-600 people down on the construction site every day right now, 7 days a week. And we're pushing right now. Our big focus is to have the entertainment district delivered by World Cup. And every time I say that, I can feel my blood pressure go up.
So it's getting close.
But it's possible. The caveat being that 3 of the buildings will be core and shell. They won't be complete interiors, but we don't want a giant, ugly construction site across the street from the World Cup. So we want those buildings lit from the exterior. They'll look complete. The digital signage on it. The fan zone will be open and usable. And we're working very hard to get COSM open by World Cup. It'll be a completely different feel as when people come downtown. I think one of the things I think is hard for people to fully understand is that we are not building down in the Gulch. We're building it up to street level, and then the building's on top of that. So
what's it, 40 feet? You got to build it up.
Yeah. So everything's on stilts, right? That's the way that we look at it. And this district here will have 3 new roads, in fact. So you'll be able to drive from Centennial Olympic Park Drive to MLK. So there'll be roads connecting. You'll be able to walk straight across. So again, if you think about our downtown is not in a great place, great shape, and there's tons of renewed interest in downtown, which is fantastic. But in large part, And that is because there's a big 50-acre hole in the middle of our downtown. So it's disconnected, it's not walkable. You know, we have this great neighborhood called Castleberry Hill that I think more people need to know and understand. But right now, it might as well be between the Grand Canyon and the rest of downtown because of this 50-acre hole. So people aren't walking from Fairleigh, Poplar, or before or after games to Castleberry because it just feels so far away.
Yeah.
This is going to completely change that and reconnect all these places. So
got it. This might be a good time to ask you, how were y'all able to pull this off? I mean, we've talked in the past, there's been articles, there's probably 20 developers that have tried to do something with this void in the middle of downtown. How'd you do it?
Well, I think, I tell people it required the kind of perfect alignment of the moon and the stars, which in this case was, a billionaire from Los Angeles named Tony Ressler buys the Atlanta Hawks and looks across the street and says, there's something should be there, more than parking lots, which don't provide real value or jobs to anybody. And happened to have a brother named Richard Ressler, who is the chairman and one of the founders of CIM Group, which is a big LA-based company that does real estate development, amongst other things. We have a lending business and an infrastructure business as well. And they got the construction team out here to kind of look at the site and figure out how to make it work. And it was difficult, as you pointed out. We found an article from a 1982 edition of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that outlined 12 attempts to develop this site.
That's it, yeah.
Up until 1982, and as we both know, there was a couple of other attempts.
Yeah.
And none of them came to fruition, I believe, because as you look at the site, it's a very, very difficult site to develop because there was 12 owners, there's easements, and there's air rights, and there's active tunnels. There's a MARTA tunnel through it. There's active rail lines running through it, and we found that like every government entity seemed to own a remnant parcel over the last 100 years.
I heard there were parcels that people didn't even know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a fact. And so we had to figure all that out and then negotiate air rights and easements. And then there's also long-term parking agreements in the CNN deck with some of our neighbors. And all those had to be negotiated. So it was very, very difficult. But CIM does that. We as a company, we take on challenging redevelopment projects or buildings all over the country. And most recently, we did the Chicago Tribune Tower, converted it to residential, really beautiful building. And we did Miami World Center, which a couple of years ago was struggling, but then CIM came in and turned it around, and now it's a very successful project.
Wow.
So it really required a company that had an appetite for risk a little bit, but also the experience doing very difficult urban redevelopment projects.
Yeah, got it.
And then the other thing, obviously there incentives needed to be negotiated. I always, make sure people understand that, cities typically provide roads and water, sewer, power to a building site, right? Mm-hmm. So it's city, county, state, utilities, it's there. So you build a building in Midtown, there's all that's running in the street that's already existing, you just kind of plug it in. In this case, because these were rail yards, none of that infrastructure existed. And again, that's why we pay taxes. Taxes go to build that infrastructure, which encourages economic growth.
Yeah.
And the city didn't have any money to do that. And so there was a property tax rebate that was negotiated, along with a sales tax rebate at the state level to help offset the cost of the lack of infrastructure that was in this location.
Wow. How long did that whole negotiation? When you were like,
years.
We're going to buy it, and then when you finally got fee simple and we're like ready to go?
So CIM took some risks. They started acquiring it before all those agreements were in place, and so the state approved it, the city approved it. Then there was a legal challenge to it, went up to the Georgia Supreme Court, and then it ended there. And then we got the development agreement signed, which was the agreement between the city and CIM. That took 3 years. And then COVID was in the middle of it. But the good news is, as soon as Mayor Bottoms signed the development agreement, we were off and running. Now we had already started with 125 Spring Street, and the Nelson Street Bridge. We also started replacing some of the sewer lines in the gulch. So, and that was all at risk, by the way. So that was prior to the development agreement even being in
just
place.
goodwill negotiating.
Just good. We were just like hoping. We were confident that this would work.
Wow.
But it's underway, and I think it's a real testament to Tony Ressler and his original vision, but also the Atlanta Hawks. And I think people who are watching this that may not know the relationship, but I think I said it earlier, but the owner of the Atlanta Hawks, his brother is Richard Ressler, who I work for, CIM Group. They both had this huge commitment to making sure Atlanta had the downtown that it deserved, which is what Tony has often said. And then the Hawks and Steve Koonin and David Lee and the entire team, before CIM was actually in place in Atlanta, because they were running a lot of this from their headquarters in Los Angeles. The Hawks really stepped up and represented the project, sold the project, garnered political support, and helped get that legislation passed, led a lot of that effort. And then eventually they hired me, and then I came in and hired a team, and then they didn't have to do that work anymore. So then we took that over. But we're we're cousins. So we're very, very closely connected. Yeah.
That's a layer that gets overlooked a lot, the Hawks' involvement.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, they really do deserve enormous credit because, again, during that period of acquisition and negotiation and incentives and all that, COVID hit. They're running a basketball team. And suddenly they're thrown into this, you need to help make this real estate project work. And with support from Los Angeles. And so, they really kept the dream alive until CIM could set up the infrastructure in Atlanta to kind of execute.
Yeah.
And I'll say one more thing, just so
please.
everybody, because I want everybody to be clear about this, is we are also self-performing. So we are the GC. So CIM builds buildings, as I mentioned earlier, throughout the country, but had never built in Georgia. I think originally the plan was we would hire a GC, but as markets got tighter, inflation was going up and interest rates were going up and supply chain issues, CIM made the decision to self-perform because it allows you to squeeze those margins a little bit. So, so we had to create a construction company, get our contractor's license, and that was no small feat. We did it. We hired obviously an amazing group of people.
Yes.
Because they're building those buildings right now in the entertainment district. It's the largest construction site probably in the Southeast right now, clearly in the region. Maybe on the East Coast, one of the largest. So we have a world-class construction development team that's actually building the project ourselves.
Wow. It's like the SpaceX Elon Musk version of real estate development. We're gonna just make it happen, however it works.